Thanks so much, Ian. It's great to speak with you today, and thank you so much for having me. Let's just make sure we get this situation started here correctly and get clear the screen. Okay, great. So again, thanks so much. Let me give you a little bit of background here on the Duval Partnership. We were founded in 2007, so we've been doing this for a little while. We're located in New York City. We work exclusively with agencies, and we specialize in strategic sales solutions for new business and revenue growth. So here's what I'm going to touch on today. All of this, of course, is in the context of agency trends, best practices in the time of COVID, and everything I'm sharing with you today is either a direct result of our work with agencies or with search consultancies or with brands. And I just want to make this one disclaimer. Sometimes I'll make broad stroke statements here. This is not directed certainly to anyone or any agency in particular, or certainly anyone attending today. So a couple of topics we want to discuss are trends, independent agencies versus holding companies, pitching, and then new business and sales. This is a little bit of kind of getting a little bit granular in some of the things that we do. So we'll walk you through some of that. So first of all, looking at some current trends. So we all know coronavirus is shaking up the business, consumer behavior on a massive scale. So I want to take a minute to outline what we're seeing playing out in the agency and the new business context. So obviously, we can't, we have to address COVID-19, diversity, inclusion, and Black Lives Matter. I was speaking to a search consultant, and about roughly 6 months ago, AdForum had a conference, and about 150 search consultants across globally gathered virtually. And the number one topic was diversity. And so search consultants are really key on that. Brands are really key on that, and looking at how agencies are addressing that issue, what the agency is doing internally to address it, and how it will help brands navigate those waters. So we create content on a weekly basis. So we've published quite a bit around diversity, and I'd welcome you all to take a look when you have a moment. One thing that we're seeing is it's going to continue. The project-based environment continues. It's been that way for quite some time. It will continue. And what we're seeing is, which is not really a great trend, but what we're seeing it's starting to see is serial project relationships. Normally, and this is still happening, where you get an opportunity to win a project and then become part of that agency roster. What we're starting to see a little bit more is that project will allow you to pitch another project. So just be prepared for that. Those that are positioned to win business on a project basis will be well suited, because I think there's going to be quite a few in the months and to come, and certainly in 2021. Competition still, I mean, there's a tremendous amount of agencies that you're competing against on a day-to-day basis. What we're seeing is in-house will only be a bigger competitor than it was, what it is currently, and what it was last year, and what it will be next year. Consultancies, freelancers, collectives, all going to be vying for the same dollar that you're pursuing.
Mark, sorry. Mark, just interrupt. Can you just check your screen sharing?
Yeah. Did it not go forward?
No, I don't think. I thought it was maybe just me, so I just checked with Elaine.
Yes, I just.
Well, we're technical difficulties. We'll get to that. Where are you? Are you on screen one?
As always, it was absolutely perfect in the rehearsal.
Right. So what are you seeing?
I've just got a grid.
Really? All right. Wow. And you switched over your screen share to me.
Yep.
Wow. Isn't that? Let's take a look at this. How
There we
about
go.
now?
Yes, that's it.
All righty. Well, there we have it. Okay, so I'm not going to go back. What I was discussing was the trends. So let's jump back into this. I apologize for that. So as I mentioned, pressure from brands for efficiencies. I'm sure you're already experiencing this, but that trend is only going to continue. You're going to be asked to do more for less. Uh, those that are well suited for digital, have the digital chops, I think that'll serve you well because there's going to be a continued emphasis on digital initiatives. Always been a focus on ROI, but I think even more so now. So it's extremely important for brands that will be pushing to evaluate and reevaluate relationships. I think this is going to be a good opportunity actually for project work because brands are going to be looking to find the next best thing. They really have to provide some ROI. And then I think what we're going to see maybe towards the end of this year, certainly the first 6 months of next year, many clients held off on reviews. And you can expect larger reviews coming down the pipes, particularly around media consolidation. And then we'll talk about this a little bit more, but acceleration towards the agency of the future. I mean, the brands are trying to figure out this transformation. I think the new agency model is also, people are looking for what is the new agency model. And I think, to tip my hat to independence, I think you're probably going to lead the charge on that. Okay, so here's a couple of things I want to share with some agencies in which we're working with and some other agencies that we know of how they've succeeded during COVID. So they've had a relentless pursuit of new business and business development efforts. It's certainly in early COVID days, the February, March, whatever, depending on what country you're in, agencies certainly scaled back in the sense of they had to be really careful about their messaging and they had to be careful about their tactics. But what we're seeing is that pursuit never stopped. And those who never stopped are actually reaping the benefits of that new work now. Spent a lot of time investing in their current clients, organic growth, protecting those relationships. We've seen a lot of new business support coming, content coming, expansion of blogs, thought leadership, and we've actually seen some pretty good video content going and supporting the agencies. And then developing and promoting new offerings. I think experiential agencies, some actually have done a really good job around this. Obviously, and here we are today sitting on a virtual call. And experiential agencies, there's no conferences, there's no events. So those really aggressive ones use their digital chops and found some and created some virtual products, and so they've done pretty well. So developing or promoting new offerings has been key to kind of navigate these choppy waters. So one thing I wanted to talk about, which Ian asked me, is independent agencies versus holding companies. So here's how you do it. How do you win against a holding company agency? And this is my personal opinion. This is my experience, but this is also shared. As I said, I've spoken with search consultants and brands and companies. Independent agencies are already winning, and I think the trend, as I mentioned earlier, is really a good one for independent and smaller agencies. Project-based independents are able to price that. They're able to, they're nimble, and they can move quickly. Large holding company agencies, they're these these lumbering giants. The old example of turning that oil tanker around in the middle of the ocean. you can't do that quickly. It takes a lot of time. So I think independents are in a good shape to win and take money from independents. Also, clients, had a conversation with a few clients over the past couple of weeks, and they're definitely looking for less overhead. There was an article that came out, and we wrote about how some clients are looking for agencies to eliminate the account management role. Sorry for any account managers on the call. I don't believe you should, but brands, companies are really looking for streamline and efficiencies. So if independents can give more personal attention, as I mentioned, the agility, the speed, and the specialized expertise. I think this is really important. We always say, brands are looking for specialists, not generalists. So really play up your strengths within those individual verticals. Focus on your competitive strength and advantages. And what this point is, and I see this, and I actually saw it recently as well. I sometimes find independent agencies and small agencies apologizing for who they are. Sometimes it's a secondary market, or maybe they're not as big against an agency they're going against. Or I hear, oh, well, our people came from larger markets, but they came here because of lifestyle choices, something like that. It comes across as apologetic. Don't do that. It really kind of puts you in a little bit of a hole. Focus on your strength and your advantages. It's about your creativity. It's about business solutions. You've got a lot to sell, and you have a great story to tell. So focus on your strengths. Build awareness and relationships. Look, this is still a one-to-one business. So connecting individually is key. Also, again, a search consultant, I asked them, how can independent agencies get on your radar? And he said, quite simply, have them pick up the phone and call me. I think a lot of times we think we have to have this unbelievable work, or we have to create this unbelievable thought leadership, which I support. We often say there's multiple spokes in the new business wheel, right? So other than that proactive outreach, what else can we do in order to engage with a prospective client? There's many things we can do. But I think sometimes we forget about the fundamentals. And again, we'll talk a little bit about that a little further in the presentation. But I think LinkedIn actually is a pretty good way of doing it as well. That's just one example. Now, I know we all get inundated with those ridiculous LinkedIn connection requests. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is there are specialized groups within LinkedIn that you can join, that you can ask questions, you can answer questions. And I know for a fact there's some people in leadership roles who are part of those groups, but also they take note who's engaging, and they've actually engaged some agencies from that. So keep that in mind. I do want to mention one challenge. Well, I think there's many challenges independents face going up against holding companies, but I think one that you should know about is procurement. The dreaded procurement. Procurement is much more comfortable working with a large holding company. They're risk adverse, and it's always, it's about the financials. So certainly make sure your financials are in order, but know that that's an obstacle. If it does get to procurement, that's going to be something that you're going to have to overcome. It's like the old saying, no one ever got fired for hiring IBM. Not suggesting that holding company agencies are akin to IBM, but I think it's a challenge, and certainly one that you're going to have to address if it does go to procurement. I love this quote. I don't know if anyone knows Hassan. I'm sure you do. You've worked with him. He's great. Holding companies are in the business of increasing shareholder value versus the business of ideas. I think that frames the current situation perfectly. And I think that, again, I think independents are in a good place to take business from those large holding companies. And brands also believe that as well, as does Hassan. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what prospects want from agencies now, and what they want they want agencies that can drive transactions while telling a story. First and foremost, driving those transactions. They want agencies, and this has always been the case. They've always wanted an agency that understands their business. No brand wants to train an agency on their business. And that's why this goes back to category expertise that I mentioned earlier in specialization. Business solutions come before advertising concerns. Their brands are looking for agencies to demonstrate how the problem was or will be solved and the solutions provided. This is a great opportunity to take a brand through a case study or a scenario, how you worked with either a competitor or with someone, maybe not a direct competitor, maybe perhaps someone within their industry, and you can show them how you walked, how you addressed the issue, the solutions you provided, and to give them a solid case study of what you did, but also what it would be like to work with you. It'll give that brand insights on how you think and how you work, and so that can be a really solid way and solid and subtle way to sell. The pandemic is accelerating change towards the agency of the future. Businesses need help with their own transformations, absolutely, and as do the new agency model, and as I referenced earlier, much of that is going to be digital. So those who have strong digital chops, you are positioned well for the future. So pitching. Everybody wants to talk about pitching. Well, how can we do better? What are the secrets? I think the secret is there's really no secret, but let's talk about how when you get in the room. But first, I wanted to share a little bit of current data that I pulled. Creative Brief surveyed 50 top brands in the UK. 67% of them don't feel confident, running a fully remote pitch process, despite 52% saying it's a good time to review agency rosters. A little bit of conflicting data there, but I think these next 2 points are great points for independent agencies. 76% of marketers agree they would consider appointing an agency for a project instead of running a pitch with the intention of long-term future appointment. That is in line with what I mentioned earlier with that project play your way onto the team. Not as often as that is not occurring as often as it used to, but it's still occurring rather frequently. And then the next point, overall observation, was that working together on something real in a challenging climate would do more to test the potential for a long-term strategic partnership than a drawn-out remote agency pitch process. Again, a great point. Get in that pitch or that conversation for that project, and it can really reap benefits and rewards for months to come. Last point, Trinity P3 researched COVID's impact on pitching, found that 61% of marketers believed remote working either wouldn't make a lot of difference or would actually be an interesting test of the candidate agencies. I kind of chuckle when I see this because is there really an option? I don't think so. But it's good to know that 61% of marketers are have signed off on remote working. So I don't know if anyone works with Mercer Island Group, or if you know Mercer Island Group, but they do great work. They're based in Seattle, and Robin, she's always saying this client does not pay attention until you start talking about them. So I think that's a really good thing to remember when you're pitching, or certainly when you're on the phone with the first conversation with a prospect. So that's the cardinal rule. So a little bit about pitching, and I think the first 2 points is a theme that I want to pull forward over the next few slides. Win before you get to the pitch. And I think that a lot of times we focus on that finish line and we forget about winning, winning at point. You know, you don't wait for that pitch to wow them. I mentioned Hassan earlier. His partner, Chris Shoemaker, who Chris I think was on the client side. Chris was on the agency side for many years, running agencies, and now he's partners with Hassan on their search consultancy. He presented, I think, at the 4As earlier in the year. I think it was right after COVID hit, but his talk was on how do you win the pitch when you don't have the winning work. And this is in line with what we always talk about, is winning at each and every touch point, from that first email you send or the first time you answer that phone, not waiting for those milestone meetings, those interim meetings, those conversations, the questions you ask. So you want to try to give yourself an unfair advantage when you get to that final pitch. So that's really important. I often say what we do for our clients are, when we're doing our prospecting and lead gen for them, we do the blocking and tackling of sales. Well, the blocking and tackling of pitching is to win at each and every step and not wait till that last minute to wow them with the creative brilliance. It doesn't bode well. Robin, this is be client centric. Connect your capabilities to their problems and goals. This is paramount. Present a business case study. Connect creative work to outcomes that move the bottom line. Story and substance over length and detail. Be concise but impactful. I think obviously this is crucial now that most of our pitches or conversations are done through Zoom or whatever technology we're using. And then more strategy and insight, less dramatic stunts, which leads me into the next slide, virtual pitching. And I think a great leveling of the playing field is the big agency theater is gone. Those large holding company agencies where they could really set up the room and really give themselves that unfair advantage, or their multi-floor offices with the platinum elevator banks. Those days are gone. And that's good. That's good for independent and smaller agencies. So I think during a virtual pitch, your creativity and passion and strength of ideas can shine. Again, I think that's great for the agencies on this call. Synergy amongst staff can come across in a virtual pitch, and it does. And I think that can be a strength for an independent. Look, oftentimes independents may be smaller, they may be housed on one floor. There's more interaction in the course of the day amongst independent agencies. A lot of those big holding company agencies, the last time they interacted with members on the pitch team was the last pitch. So dare I say that the independent agencies, smaller agencies, people, they may actually like each other. And that comes across on a pitch, especially in a virtual situation. Much like we did here, pre-tests, we did a pre-test and that failed once we got into the presentation. But do that, organize, and try to avoid technical issues if you can, but they're going to happen. I would also say anyone on the pitch should understand the technology. There shouldn't be one individual who everybody kind of looks to fix the issue. This is a great opportunity to come together as a team. I read an article, I think it was an SVP of marketing, I don't know what brand she was with, but she mentioned she likes when there are technical issues during the call, because that gives her an opportunity to look to see how that client would, how that agency would react in an emergency, or just see how they come together. So just that's an important. I think it's an important part. Understand the technology coming from a guy who is not incredibly technologically savvy. Obviously, stay engaged, but when muted, when you're not speaking, mute your microphone, but stay engaged. We're all on camera. We can be seen. Pause and check in, engage the audience, monitor reactions. Don't have a monologue. Ask questions. this is an interesting thing that was shared. The next one, coordinate agency backgrounds. And I was, once this was given to me by a company, a C-level executive at a company recently. They were in a finals. It was a final pitches, and one agency coordinated, and everybody knew each other. They'd already met, had conversations numerous times. One agency coordinated their agency background, and it sounds really kind of like simplistic, but it really made an impression on the client. One, it was easy to see because there were quite a few people, a lot of boxes on the screen. So easy to identify who was with the agency, but also it just came across as team and synergy, and it really made it made an impact on the client. Again, simple things like that. They may seem a little, but they work. And this is one thing that we've always preached. We say no office furniture, meaning don't have people who are just going to sit in chairs and not bring anything to the meeting. I think if someone is in, and again, probably even more so, it's even more apparent now that we're on the screen. But if someone is on that call, they should have a role. They should have a speaking role. And we see this with smaller agencies. Oftentimes they'll try to stack the deck a little bit or seem larger. Clients can smell that from 1,000 miles away. Don't do that. That's a bad practice. So what I wanted to talk about, how are we doing on time, Ian? I think we're doing okay.
Yeah, we're doing okay. We're good.
Okay, great. All right, so what I wanted to talk about was what I mentioned earlier, winning before the pitch, because I think a lot of times we're focused on the secret sauce, right, in the room. Whenever we write a blog, especially around when we interview search consultants and around pitching, it is always our most engaged blog. Because people are always looking for those little advantages. What can we do? What can we say that dare I say that secret sauce? There really isn't any. I'm sorry, and I think probably most of you realize that. I think it's human nature to kind of focus on the prize versus the process, but I think there's a lot of blocking and tackling that you must do in order, as we like to say, to give yourself an unfair advantage before those milestone meetings. Rarely is the creative brilliance going to dazzle that brand into hiring. So here's a couple of things that I wanted to talk about, and just a winning strategy. And this is all about not only like the formalized pitching, but also getting projects, those initial conversations. The goal is not to go to a pitch. The goal is to get that project and to get that business before it goes out to any other agencies. So what I wanted to do is to touch a little bit upon what we talk about as a winning strategy, which is about process, it's about a questioning strategy, and it's about pain. So one thing I want to just mention, because this is a little bit, those 3 points are a little bit further down the funnel, the top that would be around positioning and targeting, and Ian referenced that earlier, and we can do some work around there post meeting here. But I'm just going to assume that your positioning and your value prop, you've done all of that. You've got your core targets, you know the industries that you should be competing, and you have we always say, do you have a right to win? If you don't pursue. Company profile, this is much bigger than we do pharma work and here's some pharma companies. You really need to do a bigger stretch around company profiles. And then buyer personas. If you're not doing those on your outreach messaging, then you really need to do that, because it's a very simple example is how one would speak to, say, a CTO, far different than one would speak to, say, someone in the fashion, beauty, lifestyle industry. That's a bit of a simplistic example, but it's true. You know, the words are going to be different, the tonality is going to be different, and certainly the visuals will be different. So I just wanted to touch on that and say that these, you know, this next step is we're just assuming this is done. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of a strategic process. And one thing we always say, and this 3-step process is all about pipeline. It's filling that pipeline and pursuing good business. So when your pipeline is empty, everything is an opportunity, and that is not a good thing. If you have nothing in your pipeline, you're pursuing business you shouldn't be pursuing. So having a defined process puts you in control rather than the prospect. It creates equal business stature, which we always talk about, and we'll get into that on the next slide. Allows you to quickly qualify and disqualify. You know, we wrote a blog a couple of years ago, no is the second best word in sales, and it is. If it's a no, if it is a true no, let's get rid of him and let's move on. Let's not waste any time. Having a process, a strategic process, allows you to establish crucial guidelines, timelines, and next steps, not just for the agency, but for the brand or the company. It's a mutual agreement. It eliminates the chasing bad business. We work, obviously, we work with a lot of agencies, and what we see consistently is by not having a process, you find yourself chasing down the prospect after that initial meeting. So you haven't set any solid next steps. So 2 weeks, 3 weeks after that meeting, which you thought was great, you're chasing that prospect down just for feedback. So any sort of momentum that you had, you've lost, and you have to start all over again. And I think a strategic process empowers an agency to say no. Now, I suspect everyone on this Zoom call can say no to those inbound, or does say no to those inbound requests that are just obvious, so obvious they're not good for your agency. But I think when you don't have a full pipeline or a consistent pipeline, those opportunities that you think, well, you know, 2 of the 5 boxes are checked, so maybe we'll give it a shot, and you go for it and you don't win. You know, look, pitching is time consuming and it's expensive. And it's also demoralizing to your staff to continue to pitch and not win. So it starts with having a strategic process and getting to the point. We always say our goal when we work with new agencies is to get them to the point. And you can only do that if you have a robust pipeline. So I just want to share a little process that we actually use. There's a lot of sales processes out there. I think if you're not using one, find one. You need to be comfortable with it, and it needs to feel authentic. So this is just one that we use that helps us. And actually having a process, a strategic process, a strategic sales process, it allows you to go, and your team is everyone on your team is on board with it. It's just the next right. It just becomes natural. And also, when you don't win a project or an opportunity, you can go back and you can look. You can do a little bit of look underneath the hood and say, well, why didn't we do this? Well, maybe we didn't introduce budget quick enough. Maybe we didn't do this. Maybe we didn't do that. So it gives you an opportunity to really assess your post pitch. So just the first, bonding and rapport. Focus on a client-centric message and manner. Again, this is quite simply, it's important to deliver the message in the manner in which the person on the other side of the table, or the people on the other side of the table, want to receive it versus the way that you want to give it. So they will be far more responsive if you understand who they are. And that's, we're not going to get into great detail about personality types, or there's Myers-Briggs, things like that. But understanding who you're pitching, understanding you're speaking with, and present it much like I referenced, speaking and giving information to a CTO versus, say, a VP of marketing in fashion, beauty, lifestyle. Much different. Understand that give it the way, give them the information the way they want to receive it. Upfront contracts, which we'll talk about, creates equal business stature. This is just an agreement. It's an agreement to go to next steps if there are next steps. Budget, determine early, qualify, disqualify. Great disqualifier. We're a big believer in getting to budget early in the process. Decision, and also understanding who makes the decision, understand the buying process and who owns that decision. Really important. Fulfillment, this is a little around going deeper into those four previous, or actually those three previous points. And then focus, introducing pain, which we'll talk about on the next slide. And then post-sell. See a lot of lost business this way because agencies don't want to go back and touch on either. Maybe there's some things that haven't been fully flushed out, but a strong post-sell will really help you from getting that email or phone call later that day or the next week saying, we've decided to stick with our incumbent agency. So that's really crucial. So here's just some questions around, and I've just picked out these four. We have a lot. I would be more than happy if there's an area, whether it be closing or cold calls or whatever it may be, or these particular areas, more than happy to send you a list of additional questions. So this is just a quick snapshot sample. Feel free to, I don't know if you want to coordinate through Ian or feel free, I'll give you my email address at the end. Feel free to just shoot me a note. But around bonding and rapport, before I share my information, are you comfortable if I first ask you a question? It's getting permission to ask them questions rather than just asking them questions. And hopefully we're all asking questions, but get that buy-in, get that permission. Upfront contract. When we get to the end of the meeting, if we're both happy to move on to the next stage, let's agree to scope it out and set a date in both of our calendars. That way we can make sure we stay on target. Does that make sense? Again, what that does is it establishes those guidelines and next steps. What you're doing is you're securing your next meeting at that meeting in which you're in. So it's important to set those upfront contracts. Budget, have you given any thought to what it might take in terms of investment to address this issue? Get to that quick. That's a non-threatening question, much better than, what's your budget? And then decision, tell me how to make sure that everyone that needs to see this or comment feels that they have a chance to be heard. What should I do? You are empowering that prospect. Help me to understand. It's really, it's a great way to sell. It's a subtle way to sell, but it's much better than saying, are you the ultimate decision maker? Because you're going to get probably one of two answers. One, you're going to anger that individual and they may come back at you in that manner or tonality. Or two, they're probably going to lie to you and say yes. Either way, probably not a great place to be in. Again, those are just some simple questions. We've got a lot more. Feel free to reach out and I'll share. So, always approach, and I think this is really important, always approach your prospect knowing that there are three types of pain, and having an effective questioning strategy allows you to get to the pain. So there's three different levels. Surface pain, which is the what, the intellectual, what they will admit to, the business reasons, the why, the underlying causes, and then the impacts. And this is the real, this is the real deep pain, the how, the personal, the emotional, the compelling. Just a simple example. You may be speaking with someone who says, we need a new website. Well, that's the surface, right? The what, what they'll admit to. Business reasons behind that, the why, the underlying causes. Maybe the UX is not working. Maybe it's poorly designed, and maybe a little bit deeper down is maybe it's not generating the leads that it once was. And so the impact of that, and this is the deep pain. And if you can get to that, I think it really increases your chances of closing the business. Not only closing the business, but creating a relationship with that individual who's making those decisions. And this is the personal, the emotional. It could be, we're not getting the leads, and I'm not hitting my numbers, and I'm not making my bonuses, or they're looking, not suggesting that it's always this dire, but if I don't hit my numbers, I'm going to be out of a job. That is the real impact pain. Most brands, most companies, marketing folks are okay with the surface pain, and just to give you the surface pain. But the reason they tell you they tell you why they want a new website or whatever it may be is often not the real reason. So keep that in mind and try to go as deep as you can on the pain side. So here's just a few questions around uncovering pain. How serious would you say the problem is right now? Have you ever considered giving up on solving this issue? Is doing nothing an option? I love the last part, is doing nothing an option, because normally a brand or a marketing person will come back at you kind of in like disbelief, like you asked that question. But what it does is it allows you to ask the next question, and then you can go in and go deeper into your questioning strategy. If the situation doesn't improve or even got worse, how concerned do you imagine you or the business would be? This is an impact question. I would not lead with it, and I would be careful asking it, because that really, if they answer it honestly, that will really reveal a lot to you, and I think you're on your way to really solidifying that piece of business, but also solidifying that relationship. And what do you think this issue has cost the business over the last insert time period? And this is really kind of a simple, kind of a non-scientific cocktail napkin thing. You could say, well, the marketing person says, on average, we do 10 leads a week, and we close 5 of them. And now we're only doing 5 leads a week, and we're only closing 2 of them, and it's $100 a lead. So it's a quick, well, it's 300 leads, that are $300 you're not making this week times 4, it's $1,200 a month. Something that's a very simple example that I'm choosing, but something like you lay it out, you show them, and then certainly your solutions have to address those concerns. And so I think, again, it's a great way to uncover pain and show how you can help them overcome these challenges. So I'm going to wrap up now, and we can move to the Q&A, but a couple of quick thoughts. It's a great time to be an independent. And this is not just me telling you that. These are search consultants. And I understand there's challenges. By no means are any of us on easy street, but brands feel that way too. So that's a good thing. Trends are favoring smaller, more nimble agencies. COVID has leveled the playing field. That big theater that the holding companies once had no longer exists. Establish a strategic process. If you don't have one, get one, establish it. It's going to help. It's going to help your win rate. It's going to help your win rate, and it's also going to help you determine who you want to pitch and who you don't want to pitch, especially now with efficiencies and with all sorts of margins being squeezed. You have to find a way to save money and to make more money as well. So get a strategic process. Focus on winning at all stages. It's not about that final, it is sometimes about that final presentation, but give yourself that unfair advantage going into that final pitch. And also, try not to get in the pitch. Try to get that project, try to get that piece of business before it goes to pitch. And what we always say is no pain, no sale. And focus on the pain, focus on how you can really, and how deep you can get into that pain funnel, how you can help to achieve those, how you can relieve that pain and help that client achieve their marketing goals. So, Ian, I wanted to thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to hearing from all of you.
Mark, thank you very much. Really, really interesting. I think for me, there's a couple of big takeouts before we go to some questions. I think in your presentation, there was lots of positives as to why small independent agencies can succeed, which is great for us to hear that, but it also reinforces, why we're in business and the way in which we can take on the other company. So I thought that was really, really interesting. And I think your questioning strategy, because I think we always want to ask questions, but we're not always entirely sure how to frame the questions. So within there, I think there was some great questions, and I think that would help all of us. So that is fantastic. I've got questions starting to come in. The first question I've got, and you mentioned it right at the beginning. You talked about diversity, and certainly I know when I go out and talk to potential agencies, diversity comes up as a topic. Is diversity a make or break for a client in selecting an agency, do you think, Mark?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously we could have spent this whole hour on diversity or even more. I don't think that a client is going to choose an agency based on on diversity. I do believe a client will eliminate an agency due to diversity, but I find, I was having this conversation the other day, and it seems like it's incumbent upon agencies to change and create the, and do the, actually, quite frankly, do the right thing and make their agency look like the industries, or excuse me, the world that we all live in. I don't really know if brands are doing their part on that. Actually, I do know, and they're not. And
right.
So sometimes I think that it's incumbent upon agencies. They want to see agencies address this diversity issue, but it's big, and I think that with the forum, the ad forum. A real takeaway was from the search consultants is they understand that, look, you're not going to start firing people to hire people to address this diversity issue. What's most important, at least for search consultants and most brands, is you acknowledge it and you have maybe a plan. And it may not be a fully baked plan, but you have a plan of how you're going to move forward. I think that's important. I think that's what they're looking for. I do believe there will be requests on RFPs, RFIs around diversity and what your agency looks like. But when it gets to the finals, is someone going to lose, or excuse me, is someone going to win because they're more diverse? At this time, probably no.
Okay. A question from Vanya in Brazil. And she's saying that sometimes brands are reluctant to disclose what the budget is because they just think the agency will spend it all or perhaps spend more. And I guess I'm assuming, but perhaps in the Brazilian culture, it is more difficult for brands or for agencies to extract what the budget is. Apart from your kind of questioning, are there other ways that we can try and get clients to say what the budget or even the budget parameters are to help the agency prepare a relevant pitch?
Well, I think, and that's a great question. We see that all the time. And, there's a lot of different, could have gone down a lot of rabbit holes here. And one thing I was around proposals, right? We write proposals. I think the mindset around a proposal should be, and we all get them, right? And it's, again, kind of like that big reveal, right? But you get a proposal, what do? You go to the last page to look at the pricing. A proposal should be nothing more than a document that shares the agreed upon talking points or the agreed upon scope of work. If you're writing a proposal hoping to wow them, much like wow them on that final stand-up pitch, you're really, really putting yourself at a disadvantage. So it goes back to having that strategic process. We have just around getting to the budget. we have an agency that we work with, and I was talking to the president of the agency, and we got them a good opportunity, but they had about 4 rounds of conversations, and we're moving to close, but they could not get to the budget. The brand was saying, well, the budget is loose, so they're looking for their pricing. So we talked a little bit about bracketing. And bracketing is very simple, and it doesn't always work. It all depends on the service or the product that the agency is or the problem that they're solving. But bracketing is really simple. You have an idea, you have an idea of what your services costs, right? So it's as simple as saying, Mrs. Marketer or Mr. Marketer, on average, a project like this ranges somewhere between A and B. Because we say $200,000 to $300,000. Is that within your thinking? Is that within your budget? What is it? And you don't want to. You're not going to give on average. You don't want to commit that it's $200,000 to $300,000 because it could be $350,000. But at least you throw it back on their plate. Yeah. And it gives you a little bit. Again, they may not answer, but oftentimes they do. And certainly if they, they start grabbing their head like, oh my God, and they need to, a sip of water, you're thinking, well, okay, that's probably, that's going to be too much for us. But doing this early, and this is the conversation I had with this agency, you're 4 meetings deep and you still don't know what the budget is. Yeah. Maybe it should have happened meeting 1 or conversation 1, but it definitely should have happened no later than meeting or conversation 2. Yeah. I think that's one advantage of being Scottish, because we like to know about the money at the very beginning. Exactly. So we always ask that question. In this country, we find that talking about money is impolite, right? Yeah. So we're afraid to talk about money. We talk about it. It's the great disqualifier. I'd rather find out someone doesn't have any money or a lot less money than we need right up front, so they can go and find the partner that they need to work with, and we can go on and spend our time elsewhere. Yeah. Mark, you talked about the agency of the future. Can you maybe just give us a little bit more about what that agency of the future is? Because I think we all think that being smaller and independent, allows us to be agile and nimble and move quickly and pivot and all that kind of stuff. But just, the agency of the future is, I guess, something we're all thinking about as we start to do planning for next year, and what should our agencies look like. Can you just chat a bit more about what is that agency looking like? Yeah, I think we're all trying to figure that out. In the 90s, when there was a big financial turndown, the agencies that could do direct marketing and retail really were survived. And then in the 2000 the financial meltdown, it became they meshed digital and quote traditional in the 72 and Sunnies were born. I think people are trying to figure out what does that agency of future look like. Certainly it's digital. Mm-hmm. Certainly I think it favors and I didn't put this information or share this information just to give you all a bunch of good news and everything's going to be great. Look, it's still challenging. We're in a challenging environment, but I would much rather be in a position of being an independent or a small agency than being one of those holding company agencies who are just, they're connected to those shareholders. So I think it's going to be independent. I think it's going to be smaller. I think it's going to be nimble. I think it's going to be, I think technology, not only digital, but a technological offering gives you an advantage, because the new CMO is no longer a CMO. It's a CMO, quote, CMO/CTO. Yep. So they need to be really tech savvy. And I think agencies that are able to walk a brand through the technology, the current technology. We all know it changes, seems like to change on a daily basis. Someone that is very tech savvy, someone that is obviously well steeped in digital, and someone who's able to compete on, in some less than favorable conditions, I think. But I think those are all characteristics of the agency of the future. What that agency of the future either looks like, or what it's truly made of. I think we're all trying to figure that out right now.
Yeah. But I guess you've kind of outlined, because someone else was asking about, why is it great to be an independent? But I guess what you've just talked about in terms of being able to be responsive, to be agile, to change your business, etc., makes it much easier for us than some of the holding companies to be able to do that. And then hopefully we're more aligned with, what clients are actually looking for in the current environment.
Yeah, and again, I'm not looking to glad hand anybody. I'm not suggesting that any of us are an easy street. It's a really challenging time. But I think all of those points that you just mentioned, Ian, and also, personally, it's my experience that independent agencies, smaller agencies, are looked at differently. And that's also the how search consultants and brands. Not every search consultant, it's not an absolute, not every search consultant, not every brand, but I would say the majority of them are actually looking at independents and smaller agencies as the way forward.
Okay, interesting. And a question from James in Portland. You talk about collectives and consultancies as kind of alternatives to the big agencies. How do clients kind of define what a collective is, what a small agency is? Is there a value of a collective over a boutique, or are we just getting caught up in too much kind of jargon? How do all these, because we hear all these terms, how do they all kind of sit together?
How does a client choose maybe working with a collective versus a boutique agency?
Yeah.
Well, I think collectives, and I'm trying to think, there's one here in the States that's really a collective of freelancers, and they've done a Rosie, or I can't remember the name, but they've done a very good job of promoting themselves, but also making connections at that brand level. And really, and I think this may address a little bit of your previous question about the agency of the future. They're able to plug and play and insert themselves within that brand and to address issues, and then they're removed. Sometimes they sit in the office. Sometimes they're kind of a bit of a utility player or a specialist, if you will. So a collective can offer that up kind of on a little bit more than a freelance basis, but they can really adapt to the changing needs of the brand. And so I think those are some of the advantages. Now, being a part of the collective, I think a lot of people actually want to be a part of that, maybe ex-agency folks, because they maybe left the agency world, but they still want to be in the business. So that allows them to do work in the business, but they're not encumbered to going to an office each and every day. Mm-hmm. I think COVID may actually level that a little bit, because we're all working from home or different places. And so someone who didn't want to make that commute each and every day no longer has to. So yeah. I'm not sure if that fully answers what you were looking for, but those are just
No, that's cool. I think it has answered, because I've just got a message to say it has answered the question. So that's
okay.
Just a couple of other questions before we kind of wrap up. You talked about trying to explain to a client what it would be like to work with an agency. How do you kind of capture that and demonstrate in the kind of very false situation of a pitch what it's actually like to work with an agency, and and the kind of spirit and the personality of that agency. How do you convey that to a potential client?
Well, I think it goes back to what I said, where the old winning at each point, at each touch point. So that kind of, there's an obvious pattern. It's very specific what you want to do along the way. There's an intent there to create that relationship, or create give that brand an opportunity to understand how it would be to work with you at each and every touch point. So the question is the responses to the RFIs. I think when we work with a brand or work with an agency, we always say, and we may be pursuing 2 or 3 different verticals, but we always say the client, the prospect wants to know, we must answer 3 simple questions. 1, have you worked in my industry? I know that's a boring one, but really it's about specialization. It's about industry expertise. What problems have you solved? What solutions have you provided? Those last 2 are all about business results. It's about moving the needle. So being able to demonstrate that, like I said in the presentation, walking that client through how it could be a case study, and that case study could be, could be a regular, PowerPoint case study. It could be a video case study, but taking them through the different stages of how you worked with that client and some of the insights that you gained and the work that you did and how you got to that solution, that strategy, sharing them, taking them through that journey and that process can be in an incredibly compelling way, 1, to sell, but also to solidify a relationship, hopefully that the brand likes the way that you went about getting from point A to point C. So that's really important. I think but it goes back, and that's part of winning at each and every touch point. It's really being focused on the the entire journey versus really like, okay, we're gonna as a brand, as a search consultant was saying, it's those that win who focus on those interim meetings, not just those milestone meetings.
Okay, great. Two last questions, 2 quick questions. You talked about at the beginning, some agencies have been pitching and doing new business relentlessly during COVID. I think because we're in such a false environment and that we're not out and about meeting people, how does the pitch rate this year compared with last? Is it a fraction of last year? Are pitches coming back? How does it compare in terms of number of pitches? Because I think we're just all lacking a bit of information as to how much pitching is actually going on.
A fair amount of pitching is going on right now, more so than what you would think. I do, and I alluded to that in the presentation. There was like a complete work stoppage from a pitch perspective for months.
Yeah,
that has certainly. Is it on par with the previous year? Probably not. But in comparison to 4 months ago, it's like, wow, things are out of control. There's pitches, on every street corner. There's quite a bit of pitching going on, and then I think there will continue to be, and as I mentioned, around media consolidation, a good time to be in the media business or media agency. End of this year, probably, but I think you're going to see some really big ones within the first 6 months of next year. So we have a couple agencies that are in. One of them is in 3 pitches right now. Another one is in 4 pitches right now.
Okay, wow.
So we're also some of our other agencies. We're seeing good opportunities for project work. I'll take a project over a pitch any day, because you can really control that.
And you get started, absolutely. No.
Yeah.
The last question before we do a wrap up. I'm surprised this question has taken so long to come in, but it has come from Sabina in Prague. You talked about the decreasing role of account managers, account management. The obvious question is, if all of account management, project management disappears, who is going to manage the projects and the pitches?
I think did I make an enemy? That's a great question. And I think it's a knee-jerk reaction. I think came from brands who were looking for efficiencies, who didn't. And we wrote a blog around this, so feel free to find it. I think it was probably about a month ago. So I think the brands were just looking for efficiencies. And they just kind of pushed it, as they often do, push it on the agency's plate and says, figure it out. And I think agencies, some of them actually did eliminate that level of, account management or that role, just trying to acquiesce to the client. And when that happens, and it's been going on for years, when we agree to things like that, we agree to things like, years before is, okay, you own our ideas, right? Or we're going to do spec work, or, okay, yeah, 120 days, you can pay me in 120 days. That's acceptable. So we're kind of, we're our own worst enemy in this business, and it's not exclusive to this business, but who's going to handle? First, I would say, if a client thinks that your agency can eliminate the account management position, I would first take a look at that account management position in the agency. Are you truly proving value?
Yeah.
And that's a question that you have to ask internally. But I think the brands didn't really care I'm talking to the creative person, or I'm talking to this person, or if it's a smaller agency, I want to speak to the president. I don't really care, but I don't want to pay for it. And part of that is because they don't see the value. So it's incumbent upon the agencies to really demonstrate that value.
Okay, brilliant. Marc, thank you so much for joining the tribe today. Lots of insights, lots of little nuggets, lots of us to think about, and I think lots of hope and optimism.
Yeah. It's a good time to be independent. Like I said,
that message just comes through loud and clear, which is great. For the tribe guys here, you can find out more at the Duval Partnership and subscribe to Marc's newsletters, and obviously, please get in touch with them. And a kind of big thanks to everyone who's joined us today. We'll share the recording with all the attendees. And if you have any questions or want to know anything more about today, please email Elaine or myself. Next week, with Ernie and Nicole from EGC in New York, talking about new revenue streams. So make sure you join us next week. But Marc, once again, many thanks. Great you joined us, and I hope we see you again soon.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity, Ian.
Not at all.
Great day.
Great, Andrew, have a great day. Okay, bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.